They called her the ghost of Duskfall Manor. For 21 years, Elwyn Maris had lived in the shadows, invisible to the wolves who ruled her world. She was an Omega without a voice, a servant without a name, and a forgotten daughter of a bloodline everyone believed had burned to ash. But forgotten things have a way of rising. When she slipped into the obsidian summit, wearing a stolen mask and a borrowed dress, she wasn't looking for trouble. She was looking for one night of freedom. One night where no one knew she was the packless runt who scrubbed blood stains from the dungeon floors. She found something else entirely. He was leaning against a marble pillar, watching her with eyes like molten silver. She thought he was the infamous Theon Vane, the Alpha King's scandalous younger brother. So she flirted. She teased. She let herself pretend she was someone worth wanting. Then he leaned in close, his breath hot against her ear, and whispered 3 words that changed everything. Wrong brother, sweetheart. She had just seduced the most powerful wolf on the continent, and he had no intention of letting her go. The dungeon beneath Duskfall Manor smelled of rust, damp stone, and old fear. Elwyn Maris knew every crack in these walls, every stain on the floor, every echo that bounced through the narrow corridors. She had been cleaning them since she was old enough to hold a rag. Today, the stains were fresh. She dipped her brush into the bucket of lye water, ignoring the way it burned the raw splits in her knuckles. The prisoner had been executed at dawn. A rogue, they said, a spy from the Eastern Territories. Elwyn hadn't looked at his face when they dragged the body past her. She had learned long ago that looking only made the nightmares worse. "Faster, ghost!" The command cracked through the silence like a whip. Elo didn't flinch. She had trained herself not to react to Seralda Ashworth's voice, though every syllable made her stomach clench. Seralda descended the stairs, her heeled boots clicking against the stone. She was beautiful in the way a viper was beautiful. Raven hair, porcelain skin, and eyes the color of frozen amber. She was the daughter of Alpha Aldrich Ashworth, ruler of Duskfall. She had made tormenting Elwyn her personal art form since childhood. "The summit guests arrive in 6 hours," Seralda said, stopping just close enough that Elwyn could smell her perfume. Jasmine and cruelty. Alpha Aldrich wants the manor spotless. That includes this cesspool you call a workspace. "I'll finish in time," Elwyn said quietly, scrubbing harder. "You'll finish when I say you finish." Seralda's boot came down on Elwyn's hand, grinding her fingers against the wet stone. Pain flared white-hot up her arm. Elo bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted copper. "Look at me when I'm speaking to you." Elwyn raised her head slowly. Her eyes, an unusual shade of pale violet, met Seralda's amber gaze. Something flickered in Seralda's expression. Unease. It was always there just for a moment before the cruelty returned. "Freak," Seralda muttered, stepping back. "No wonder your parents abandoned you. Those eyes are unnatural." Elwyn said nothing. She had heard it all before. Freak, ghost, cursed. The Omega born without a wolf, without a pack, without anyone to claim her. Elder Ashworth had found her as an infant at the edge of the Duskfall territory, wrapped in a blanket, with no note, no explanation. He had kept her out of pity. His son, Aldrich, kept her out of spite. The servants' quarters are off limits tonight. Seralda continued, examining her nails. The guests are important. Alpha Aldrich doesn't want them seeing the trash. You'll sleep in the cellar again. Elowyn thought. She almost laughed. The cellar had been her bedroom more often than not for the past 3 years. And don't even think about sneaking a glimpse of the summit. Seralda's lips curled into a smirk. The Obsidian King is attending. The actual Alpha King. If someone like you even breathed the same air as him, it would be an insult to the crown. Elowyn kept her face blank, but her heart stuttered. The Obsidian King. Caix Vane, ruler of all 12 territories, commander of the legendary Onyx Guard, and by all accounts, the most powerful alpha to walk the earth in 3 centuries. He hadn't attended a regional summit in over a decade. Why now? Seralda turned on her heel, pausing at the bottom of the stairs. Oh, and Alpha Aldrich wants you in his study at midnight. He has a special task for you. Her smile turned venomous. Don't keep him waiting. The door slammed shut, plunging the dungeon back into shadow. Elowyn stared at the blood-stained floor, her pulse pounding in her ears. Midnight, special task. The words coiled around her chest like chains. She knew what Aldrich's special tasks meant. The bruises on her rib from the last one had barely faded. No more. A voice whispered in the depths of her mind. It was faint, like hearing someone speak through water. But it was there. Elowyn blinked, shaking her head. She had been hearing that voice more often lately. A hallucination, probably, a symptom of exhaustion and starvation and years of isolation. She plunged her hands back into the bucket and scrubbed until her arms ached, but the voice lingered. Tonight, it whispered, everything changes tonight. By dusk, Elowyn had finished the dungeon, the great hall, and 3 of the guest corridors. Her back screamed in protest, and her hands were so raw they trembled when she tried to hold the mop handle. She hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. She slipped into the kitchen through the servants' entrance, hoping to steal a crust of bread before anyone noticed. Elo, the nickname made her tense, but this voice was soft, kind. Maron, the head cook's daughter, was standing by the pantry door, holding out a cloth bundle. Quickly, Maron urged, pressing it into Elowyn's hands. Bread, cheese, and a few slices of dried meat. Hide it before the others see. Marin, you'll get in trouble, Elowyn whispered, but her fingers were already clutching the bundle like a lifeline. I'll survive. Marin's brown eyes were warm. She was one of the few people in the manor who treated Elowyn like a person instead of a ghost. You need your strength. Something tells me tonight is going to be different. Elowyn frowned. Different how? Marin hesitated, glancing around to make sure they were alone. There are whispers among the kitchen staff. The king didn't come here for politics. He's searching for someone. Something about an old bloodline, a power that was supposed to be extinct. She lowered her voice further. The elder wolves are nervous. I've never seen Elder Ashworth look so pale. A chill crept down Elowyn's spine. What bloodline? I don't know, but whatever it is, the king has been visiting packs across the continent, looking for traces of it, and now he's here. Marin squeezed Elowyn's hand. Just stay hidden tonight. Whatever happens at that summit, it's not meant for people like us. Elo nodded, but something stirred in her chest, a restlessness she couldn't name. After Marin left, Elowyn snuck to her tiny alcove behind the laundry room. It wasn't much: a thin mattress, a cracked mirror, and a wooden chest containing everything she owned. She sat on the mattress, eating the bread slowly to make it last, and stared at her reflection. Violet eyes stared back. Eyes that didn't match anyone in Duskfall. Eyes that Seralda called unnatural and Alpha Aldrich Ashworth called unsettling. She touched the faded birthmark on her inner wrist. It was shaped like a crescent moon overlapping a flame. She had always assumed it was just a strange scar, but lately it had started to ache. Tonight. The voice again, clearer now, closer. Elowyn stood up abruptly, her heart racing. She crossed to the wooden chest and dug through the few possessions inside, until her fingers closed around fabric. A dress, deep emerald silk with silver thread along the bodice. She had found it 3 years ago, discarded in a pile meant for burning. Someone had torn the hem and declared it ruined. Elowyn had spent months secretly mending it stitch by stitch, hiding it at the bottom of her chest like a forbidden treasure. She had never worn it. Where would she ever go? But now, holding it up to the dim light, a wild thought seized her. The summit! Hundreds of guests from across the territories. Masks required for the opening masquerade. No one would recognize her. No one would know she was the wolfless Omega who cleaned the dungeons. For one night, she could pretend to be someone else, someone free. It was reckless. It was stupid. If Aldrich caught her, she would be beaten within an inch of her life. But the alternative was going to his study at midnight. Elo looked at her reflection again. The girl staring back didn't look afraid anymore. She looked angry. One night, she whispered to herself. Just one night where I'm not a ghost. She began to dress. 2 hours later, Elowyn stood in the shadows behind a marble column, watching the grand ballroom fill with wolves. Her heart hammered so violently, she was certain someone would hear it. The dress fit perfectly, hugging her slender frame in ways that made her feel exposed and powerful at once. She had found a silver mask among the discarded decorations, a delicate thing shaped like ivy leaves that covered the upper half of her face, but left her distinctive violet eyes visible through the ornate eye holes. Her pale blonde hair was loose for the first time in years, cascading down her back like moonlight. She didn't look like a servant. She didn't look like a ghost. She looked like she belonged. Now she just had to survive the night. The masquerade was a fever dream of silk and shadows. Chandeliers dripping with black crystals cast fractured light across the crowd. Wolves in masks of gold and obsidian danced to music that seemed to pulse from the walls themselves. The air was thick with pheromones, expensive wine, and the electric tension of predators circling prey. Elowyn stayed at the edges, clutching a glass of champagne she hadn't dared to sip. Every second she expected a hand to close around her arm, to hear Seralda's venomous hiss or Aldrich's cold command. But no one looked twice at her. To them, she was just another masked noble, another face in the crowd. The freedom was intoxicating. She wandered past clusters of gossiping wolves, catching fragments of conversation, trade negotiations, border disputes, and one name repeated over and over in hushed, reverent tones. Caix Vane. They say he killed the Alpha of Thornfield with his bare hands. I heard he hasn't taken a mate in 12 years. rejected every candidate, cold as the obsidian throne he sits on. Beautiful, though, terrifyingly beautiful. Elo's curiosity burned, but she didn't dare look for the king. Someone like her standing too close to someone like him. It would end in blood. Instead, she drifted toward the terrace doors, seeking fresh air and solitude. The balcony overlooked the Duskfall cliffs, where the winter sea crashed against the rocks 100 feet below. The cold wind bit at her exposed shoulders, but she welcomed it. It made her feel awake, alive, escaping already. The voice came from her left, low and smooth as aged whiskey. Elowyn spun, her champagne sloshing dangerously close to the rim. A man stood in the shadows of the terrace, leaning against the stone balustrade with the casual arrogance of someone who had never been denied anything. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in black from head to toe. A simple obsidian mask covered the upper half of his face, but she could see his jaw, sharp, defined, shadowed with stubble. His lips were curved in a faint smirk, but it was his eyes that stopped her breath. Silver, pure liquid mercury, catching the moonlight mirrors, the vein bloodline. It had to be. Only the royal family carried that distinctive eye color. "I needed air," Elowyn managed, surprised her voice didn't shake. Understandable. He pushed off the balustrade and took a step closer. The moonlight revealed more of him now. Dark hair slightly disheveled, a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. An aura of barely contained power that made the air feel heavier. These events are tedious. Too many wolves trying to impress each other. Elo recognized him now, or thought she did. The scandal sheets that occasionally made their way to the servants' quarters always featured one name alongside tales of broken hearts and wild escapades. Theon Vane, the Alpha King's younger brother, the charming rogue, the one who bedded noble daughters and left chaos in his wake. He was exactly as handsome as the rumors claimed, and his attention was fixed entirely on her. A reckless thrill shot through her veins. This was Theon Vane, the playboy prince, the safe one, the one who flirted with everyone and meant nothing by it. For one night, she could play this game. "You don't seem to be trying to impress anyone," she said, letting her voice drop into something lower, more teasing. Standing out here alone in the dark, his smirk widened. Maybe I was waiting for what? For someone worth talking to. He took another step closer, close enough that she could smell him now. Pine and wood smoke and something darker, like a storm about to break. "What's your name, little wolf?" Elo hesitated. She couldn't give her real name. No one would recognize Elowyn Maris, but she couldn't risk it. "Guess," she said instead, tilting her chin up. Something flickered in that mercurial gaze. Surprise, maybe, or interest. "Dangerous game." He murmured, "I'm very good at guessing." "Then guess." He circled her slowly, close enough that his sleeve brushed her bare arm. The contact sent electricity crackling across her skin. She had never been touched with anything but cruelty. This was different. This was heat. "You're not from Duskfall," he said. "Your accent is neutral, trained. You hold yourself like nobility, but you don't wear their arrogance. Your dress is beautiful, but mended at the hem. Someone who has means, but not in excess." He stopped in front of her, those pale metallic eyes boring into her violet ones. And those eyes, I've never seen that color. Not in any pack I visited. Elowyn's pulse hammered. She forced herself to hold his gaze. Maybe I'm no one special. I doubt that very much. The tension between them crackled like lightning before a strike. He reached up, his fingers hovering near her mask. May I? Her breath caught. If he removed her mask, the game was over. He would see the gauntness of her cheeks, the shadows under her eyes, and the face of a servant instead of a noble. But the way he was looking at her made her feel like someone else entirely. Only if I can remove yours, she whispered. He laughed, a low, genuine sound that made warmth bloom in her chest. Bold. I like that. I've been told I'm reckless. By whom? By people who underestimated me. His hand dropped from her mask to her chin, tilting her face up. The touch was gentle, but there was steel beneath it. Command dominance, the signature of an alpha wolf. Then they were fools, he said softly. Elowyn's heart was racing so fast she felt dizzy. This was Theon Vane, the safe brother, the one who collected conquests like trophies and discarded them by morning. She knew that, but the way he looked at her made her feel like she was the only person in the world. You know, she said, summoning every ounce of courage she possessed. I've heard stories about you. They say you're quite the heartbreaker. Do they? They say you seduce women for sport. He leaned in closer, his lips brushing the shell of her ear. And yet here you are letting me. She shivered. Maybe I'm playing my own game. Maybe you are. His voice dropped to a whisper. But I should warn you, little wolf, you don't know who you're playing with. Elo pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. She let her own lips curve into a daring smile. I know exactly who you are. Always. Prince Emma. Theon. The silence that followed was deafening. Then he laughed again, but this time the sound was different, darker, more dangerous. He leaned in once more, his mouth so close to hers she could feel the heat of his breath. His hand slid to the back of her neck, holding her in place. Not tight enough to hurt, tight enough to own. Wrong brother, sweetheart, he whispered. Elowyn's blood turned to ice. No, that wasn't possible. She stared into those liquid silver eyes, and the amusement in them had shifted to something predatory, something hungry. Cake's vein, he said, his thumb stroking the side of her throat. Alpha King of the 12 territories, and I have been watching you all night. The terrace doors burst open behind them. Torchlight flooded the balcony, and with it came the one voice Elowyn dreaded most. There she is, Seralda shrieked, pointing a trembling finger. I'd recognize those cursed violet eyes anywhere. The servant, the thief, she stole that dress and snuck into the summit. Guards swarmed forward. Elowyn tried to pull away, but Kykes' hand was still on her neck, his storm-colored eyes still locked on hers, and behind Seralda stood Alpha Aldrich Ashworth, his expression a mask of cold fury. Maris, Aldrich said, his voice cutting through the chaos, you have violated pack law. You have trespassed among your betters. The punishment is public flogging, followed by banishment. Elowyn's legs nearly buckled. She was dead. She was dead, and the last thing she would ever feel was the hand of a king on her throat. But Kykes didn't release her. Instead, he turned slowly to face Aldrich, and when he spoke, his voice was soft as falling snow, and twice as cold. You dare, the Alpha King said, to interrupt me, The ballroom had gone silent. 500 wolves stood frozen, their masks glinting in the chandelier light. Every eye fixed on the terrace doors where the Alpha King held a servant girl by the throat. Aldrich's face cycled through shock, confusion, and finally settled on calculated fury. He stepped forward, flanked by 2 guards, his posture rigid with authority he didn't truly possess. "Your Majesty," Aldrich said, forcing deference into his voice. "I apologize for this disruption. This creature is property of the Duskfall Pack. She is a wolfless omega, a stray we took in out of charity. She has clearly lost her mind, sneaking into your presence like this. I will handle her punishment personally. Property." The word landed like a branding iron on Elowin's soul. Kykes' grip on her neck didn't waver. His pale metallic eyes remained fixed on Aldrich, and the temperature on the terrace seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Property," Kykes repeated, his voice deceptively mild. "You claim ownership of this woman. She is packless, Your Majesty. No wolf, no lineage, no value beyond her labor." Aldrich's lip curled. "I assure you, whatever game she was playing, whatever lies she told you, she is nothing. A ghost, a nobody." Elowin wanted to disappear. She wanted the cliff behind her to crumble and swallow her whole. Every word Aldrich spoke stripped away the illusion she had built tonight, exposing the pathetic truth beneath. She was nothing. She had always been nothing. Seralda pushed through the crowd, her amber eyes gleaming with vindictive pleasure. "She stole that dress from the donation pile. She's been hoarding it for years, the little thief." And those eyes of hers, she shuddered dramatically. "Unnatural, cursed. My father always said we should have drowned her as an infant." A murmur rippled through the watching crowd. Elowin heard the whispers like knives sliding between her ribs. "Wolfless? How is that possible? Look at her, thin as a skeleton. She looks half feral. The king was touching that." How embarrassing for him. Kykes released her. The absence of his hand felt like a death sentence. Elowin stumbled backward, catching herself on the balustrade, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She couldn't look at him. She couldn't bear to see the disgust that must be forming on his face. "Elowin Maris," Aldrich's voice cracked like a whip. He strode onto the terrace, seizing her arm with bruising force. "You will be flogged at dawn, 50 lashes. Then you will be cast out beyond the territory boundaries, with nothing but the rags on your back." He leaned in close, his breath hot and rancid against her ear. "I told you to come to my study tonight. You should have obeyed. This could have been avoided." Tears burned behind Elowin's eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of them. She searched the crowd for Marin's face, for anyone who might speak for her. But the servants had vanished. Even the wolves who had smiled at her tonight, who had danced near her and complimented her dress, now looked through her as if she had ceased to exist. That was when Seralda delivered the final blow. "Oh, and Your Majesty." Seralda's voice rang out, sweet as poisoned honey. "In case you were wondering why she targeted you specifically, I should mention that Elowin has delusions. She talks to herself in the dungeons, claims she hears voices." Seralda laughed, the sound brittle and cruel. The wolfless Omega thought she could seduce a king. As if someone like her could ever be worthy of someone like you. The crowd laughed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't raucous, it was worse. It was the polite, dismissive laughter of wolves who had already forgotten her name. Aldrich dragged her toward the ballroom doors. Elowyn's heels scraped against the stone. Her mask had fallen, shattered on the terrace floor, and her face was bare now, exposed. Every hollow cheekbone, every shadow of exhaustion, every mark of years spent starving in the dark. She was almost at the threshold when she heard it. Elowyn, not the crowd, not Aldrich, not Seralda. The voice inside her head, clearer than it had ever been, louder, angrier. They will burn for this. Pain exploded behind her eyes. Elowyn collapsed. Her knees hit the marble floor of the ballroom, and a scream tore from her throat. It wasn't a scream of humiliation. It was something deeper, something primal, something that had been locked away for 21 years and was finally breaking free. Aldrich stumbled back, releasing her arm as if she had burned him. What the hell? Elowyn couldn't answer. She couldn't think. Her bones were on fire. Her blood was boiling in her veins. Every cell in her body was rearranging itself, tearing apart and rebuilding into something new. The voice roared inside her skull. I am done sleeping. I am done hiding. Let them see what they have caged. Someone restrain her, Aldrich shouted, but his voice sounded distant, muffled, as if Elowyn were hearing it from underwater. She looked down at her hands. They were glowing, not metaphorically. Her skin was emanating light, a pale luminescence that pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. Her fingernails lengthened, sharpening into claws that gleamed like polished silver. That's impossible, someone whispered. She's wolfless. She can't shift. But Elowyn was shifting, her spine arched, vertebrae cracking, and reforming with sounds like breaking ice. Fur erupted along her arms, not gray or brown or black like a normal wolf, but white, pure, blinding white, shimmering with an iridescent glow that cast prismatic light across the walls. The pain was beyond anything she had ever experienced. It was birth and death and rebirth compressed into seconds. She screamed again, but the sound that emerged was no longer human. It was a howl. The chandeliers shook. The crystal glasses on every table shattered simultaneously. Wolves throughout the ballroom clapped their hands over their ears, some dropping to their knees from the sheer sonic force. And then the transformation completed. Where Elowyn Maris had knelt, broken and humiliated, a wolf now stood. But this was no ordinary wolf. She was massive, easily 7 feet at the shoulder, towering over even the largest alphas in the room. Her fur was luminous white, each strand catching the light like fiber optics, creating a halo of radiance around her form. Her eyes, once violet, now blazed with golden fire, ancient and terrible and beautiful. And on her forehead, visible even through the fur, burned a mark. The Lunaris crest, the moon's flame, the symbol of a bloodline that had been extinct for 300 years. Lunaris, Elder Ashworth breathed, his face ashen. He was Seralda's grandfather, the oldest wolf in Duskfall, and his voice trembled with genuine terror. The Lunaris bloodline, the moon's chosen. It's not possible. They were all killed. We made sure of it. We made sure. The words hung in the air like a confession. The white wolf turned her burning gaze toward the elder. A growl rumbled from her chest, so deep it vibrated in the bones of everyone present. The marble floor beneath her paws cracked from the sheer pressure of her aura. Seralda screamed and tried to run. She made it 3 steps before the wolf moved. One moment, Seralda was fleeing. The next, an enormous white paw slammed down inches from her face, cracking the marble like eggshell. Seralda collapsed, sobbing. Her perfect mask of cruelty shattered into naked terror. The white wolf didn't attack. She simply stood over the woman who had tormented her for years, golden eyes boring down with cold judgment. Kneel. The command wasn't spoken aloud. It resonated directly in the minds of every wolf in the ballroom. A psychic shockwave of pure dominance that bypassed ears entirely. They knelt, omegas first, dropping instantly as if their strings had been cut. Then betas fighting the compulsion for only seconds before their knees buckled. Even the alphas, proud and powerful, found themselves sinking to the ground, their wolves whimpering in submission. Aldrich lasted longer than most, his face contorted with rage and disbelief as he fought against the invisible force pressing him down. "This is my territory," he snarled through gritted teeth. "I am the Alpha of Duskfall. I bow to no one." The white wolf turned to face him. She padded forward slowly, each step deliberate, her massive form radiating an aura of power that made the air itself feel heavy. When she reached Aldrich, she lowered her head until her muzzle was inches from his face. Then she exhaled. The breath hit him like a physical force, flattening him against the floor. His arms gave out. His forehead struck marble. The Alpha of Duskfall lay prostrate before the Omega he had beaten, starved, and tried to break. Only one person in the ballroom remained standing, Caix Vane. The Alpha King stood exactly where he had been on the terrace threshold, his distinctive silver stare fixed on the white wolf. With an expression Elwyn could not read. He wasn't kneeling. He wasn't fleeing. He was watching her with an intensity that cut through even her rage-fueled haze. The wolf turned to face him. Every instinct screamed at her to force his submission too, to prove that she was above everyone, that no one would ever look down on her again. But when their eyes met, something else stirred beneath the fury. Recognition. "Lunaris," Caix said softly. He didn't shout. He didn't need to. In the deathly silence of the ballroom, his voice carried like a blade. "The moon's flame. We searched every corner of the continent for you." He walked toward her, not cautiously, not fearfully, but with the steady confidence of a man approaching an equal. "Aldrich," the king's voice turned to ice. "You told me there were no wolves of interest in your pack. You told me the Lunaris bloodline had no survivors in your territory." Aldrich was still flattened against the floor, unable to rise. "I didn't know," he gasped. "She was wolfless. She never showed any signs. I swear on my blood, I didn't know." "You didn't know," Caix repeated. He stopped 5 feet from the white wolf, close enough that she could kill him with one swipe of her claws. "You starved her, beat her, forced her to sleep in cellars, and clean your dungeons. You did all this to the most sacred bloodline in our history. And your defense is that you didn't know." He looked up at Elwyn, and for the first time, something like warmth flickered in those cold eyes like liquid mercury. "Shift back," he said gently. "You're safe now. No one here will ever touch you again." The wolf hesitated. The fury still burned, demanding blood and vengeance. But beneath it, exhausted and overwhelmed, was the girl who had just wanted one night of freedom. Slowly, the light began to fade. Bones cracked and reformed. Fur receded into smooth skin. The massive wolf shrank, reshaping until Elowyn knelt naked on the cracked marble floor, trembling violently, her pale hair cascading around her like a veil. Kykes shrugged off his black coat in one fluid motion. He stepped forward and draped it over her shoulders, enveloping her in warmth and the scent of pine and storm. Then he turned to face the crowd, his arm resting protectively around the shivering girl. "Let it be known," the Alpha King announced, his voice ringing through the shattered ballroom, "that Elowyn of the Lunaris bloodline is under my personal protection. Any wolf who threatens her, touches her, or speaks ill of her will answer directly to me." He looked down at Aldrich, still prostrate on the floor. "And you, Alpha Aldrich Ashworth, will answer for what has been done here. Your pack is now under Crown investigation for the concealment and abuse of a royal bloodline." Aldrich's face went white, but Kayak's wasn't finished. He lifted Elowyn into his arms, cradling her against his chest as if she weighed nothing, as if she were precious. "We're leaving," he said to no one in particular. He carried her toward the shattered terrace doors, his black-clad guards materializing from the shadows to form a protective perimeter. Behind them, the ballroom remained frozen. 500 wolves still on their knees, staring at the destruction left in the wake of a girl they had called nothing. Seralda sobbed into the cracked marble. Aldrich didn't move, and from the upper balcony hidden in shadow, a figure watched the king carry the white wolf into the night. Theon Vane, the real one, watched from the shadows, his own silver gaze narrowing, and a slow smile spread across his handsome face. "Well," he murmured to himself, swirling the whiskey in his glass, "this just got interesting." Elowyn woke to silence and warmth. For a disorienting moment, she thought she was dead. The afterlife, she reasoned, must be soft. It must smell like cedar and clean linen. It must feel like floating on clouds. Then she opened her eyes. She was lying in a bed larger than her entire alcove back in Duskfall. The sheets were black silk, impossibly smooth against her bare skin. A fire crackled in a massive stone hearth across the room, casting dancing shadows on walls of dark granite. Beyond floor-to-ceiling windows, she could see mountains, sharp snow-capped peaks piercing a sky full of stars. This wasn't Duskfall. You slept for 18 hours. Elowyn bolted upright, clutching the sheets to her chest. Kayaks sat in a leather armchair near the fire, watching her with those unnerving pale eyes. He had changed from his formal attire into simpler clothes, a black sweater, dark trousers. He looked less like a king and more like a man, a devastatingly handsome man who had seen her at her most vulnerable. "Where am I?" Her voice came out hoarse, cracked from screaming during the shift. "The Obsidian Citadel, my home." He rose from the chair, moving to a side table where a pitcher of water waited. He poured a glass and brought it to her, his movements careful, non-threatening. "You're in the northern mountains, about 30 miles from Duskfall." Elo took the water with trembling hands. She drank deeply, the cool liquid soothing her raw throat. "Why?" she asked when she finished. "Why? Why bring me here? Why protect me?" She set the glass down, her violet eyes searching his face. "You're the Alpha King. I'm a servant who lied to you at a party. You should have let Aldrich punish me. Keggs's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his gaze. You didn't lie to me. I let you believe I was a noble. I flirted with you under false pretenses. You flirted with me because you thought I was my brother. A hint of amusement crossed his features, which I'll admit stung my pride somewhat. Elowyn felt heat rise to her cheeks. I didn't know what the king looked like. I only knew about Theon from the gossip sheets. Yes, Theon does love his gossip sheets. Kayaks sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining a respectful distance. Elo, do you understand what happened to you in that ballroom? The memories crashed back. The pain, the transformation, the power that had erupted from somewhere deep inside her, forcing an entire pack to their knees. I shifted, she whispered, but I'm wolfless. I've never had a wolf. You were never wolfless. Kayks's voice was gentle but firm. You were sealed. Someone placed a binding on your wolf when you were an infant, locking her away so deeply that even you couldn't sense her. The trauma of what happened, the rejection, the humiliation, it shattered the binding. Elowyn stared at him. That's impossible. Why would anyone do that? To hide you. Keggs reached into his pocket and withdrew something small, a locket on a silver chain. He held it up, and Elowyn recognized the symbol etched into the metal. The ancient mark on her wrist rendered in delicate silver filigree, a crescent moon overlapping a flame. This was found with you when you were abandoned at Duskfall's border, Kayaks said. Aldrich's father kept it hidden. He knew what it meant. He knew what you were. And what am I? The last of the Lunari's bloodline, the moon's chosen. Kayaks pressed the locket into her palm. 300 years ago, the Lunaris wolves ruled the 12 territories. They were conduits of the moon goddess's direct power. Their wolves weren't just strong, they were divine. Elo's hand closed around the locket. It felt warm against her skin, pulsing faintly as if it had a heartbeat. The other bloodlines grew jealous. Kayaks continued. They formed an alliance and slaughtered the Lunaris in a single night. Every man, woman, and child, or so they believed. His eyes like liquid mercury met hers. Someone survived. Someone hid a child and bound her power to keep her safe. My parents, Elowyn breathed, likely. We may never know for certain. Kayaks stood pacing toward the window. What I do know is that there are factions who still fear the Lunaris, the Ember Covenant, descendants of those who orchestrated the massacre. They have been searching for any survivors for 3 centuries. A chill ran down Elowyn's spine, and now I've revealed myself to 500 wolves. Yes, they'll come for me. They'll try. Keggs turned back to face her, and his expression had hardened into something fierce. But you are under my protection now, not as a charity case, not as a rescued servant, as a guest of the crown and a wolf of immeasurable value. He crossed back to the bed, kneeling so that their eyes were level. Elowyn, I have spent 12 years searching for the lost Lunaris. I visited every pack on the continent, chasing rumors and whispers. I had nearly given up hope. His voice dropped, rougher now. And then you walked onto that terrace in a mended dress and stolen mask, and you looked at me like I was just a man. Elo's breath caught. You were playing along on the terrace. You knew I didn't know who you were. I did. Why didn't you correct me immediately? Something dangerous flickered in his gaze. because for the first time in 12 years, someone was looking at me without fear, without calculation, without wanting something from the crown. You were looking at me like I was worth flirting with for my own sake." He reached out, his fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. I wasn't ready to give that up. The touch sent electricity cascading through her veins. "So what happens now?" Allah whispered. "Now I train you. I help you understand your power so you can control it instead of letting it control you." Kaik stood extending his hand to her. "And when the Ember Covenant comes, because they will come, we face them together." Elo looked at his outstretched hand. 24 hours ago, she had been scrubbing blood from dungeon floors. Now the most powerful wolf in the world was offering her an alliance. She took his hand. Together she agreed. Cakes pulled her to her feet, and for a moment they stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "One more thing," he said, his voice dropping to that low, dangerous register that made her pulse race. "The mate bond." Elowyn froze. "What? When your wolf awakened, mine recognized her. That was not simple attraction on the terrace, Elo. That was the first pull of a mate bond. Did you feel it?" She had the pull in her gut, the electricity when he touched her, the sense that something fundamental had shifted in the universe when their eyes met. "I felt something," she admitted carefully. Kykes's lips curved into a smile that was equal parts predator and promise. "Good," he said, "because so did I." Before she could respond, a sharp knock echoed through the chamber. "Brother." The voice was light, amused, and distinctly familiar. "Stop hoarding the legendary wolf. The council is here, and they're demanding an audience." Kykes sighed, releasing her hand. That would be Theon, the actual Theon. The door swung open, and the man from the gossip sheets sauntered in. He was nearly identical to Kayak's in coloring, with the same distinctive vein eyes and dark hair. But where Caius was sharp edges and controlled intensity, Theon was loose limbs and easy smiles. "So you're the one who thought my brother was me?" Theon grinned, looking her up and down with obvious appreciation. "I'm flattered and offended. Mostly flattered." "Theon," Kayaks warned, "relax, brother. I'm not here to steal your wolf." Theon's grin widened. "I'm here because the council has declared her existence a threat to continental stability. They're demanding she submit to evaluation." He paused dramatically. "And if she fails, they want her executed." The council chamber was carved from the heart of the mountain itself, a vast circular room with a domed ceiling painted with constellations. 7 thrones of polished obsidian formed a crescent around a central floor, each occupied by an ancient wolf in ceremonial robes. Elowyn stood in the center, feeling their eyes crawl over her like insects. Kaik stood at her right side, Theon at her left. The king had insisted she change before the audience. She now wore a simple but elegant dress of deep violet, the color matching her eyes. Her pale hair was braided back, exposing the faint mark on her forehead that hadn't fully faded since the shift. Lunaris, the eldest council member, rasped. His name was Morai, and he looked like he had been ancient when the mountains were young. "We thought your bloodline eradicated." "Clearly you were wrong," Elowyn said. A murmur rippled through the council. Kykes's hand brushed her lower back, a subtle warning to tread carefully. The girl has spirit. A female council member observed. Asaria, according to Theon's whispered briefing. She was younger than the others, perhaps only a century old, with sharp green eyes that missed nothing. Spirit is good, but spirit without control is dangerous. She shifted for the first time 2 days ago. Another member interjected. Varen, the military strategist, an uncontrolled Lunaris is a weapon without a safety. She could level a city if her emotions spike. She forced an entire ballroom of wolves to kneel, Morai added, including a sitting alpha. That kind of power hasn't been seen in 300 years. And that terrifies you, Caix said, his voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. It should, but your fear doesn't give you the right to execute an innocent woman. Innocent? Varen laughed coldly. She is a walking apocalypse. She is standing right here. Elowen snapped, her patience fraying, and she would appreciate being spoken to instead of about. Silence. Then, surprisingly, Asaria smiled. I like her. Liking her is irrelevant, Morai said. The law is clear. Any wolf whose existence poses an existential threat to the territories must be evaluated. If she cannot demonstrate control within the lunar cycle, she must be contained permanently. 1 month, Elowen said. You're giving me 1 month to master power that my ancestors trained their entire lives to wield. The law is the law. Caix stepped forward, and the temperature in the chamber dropped. Then I invoke the right of stewardship. As Alpha King, I claim responsibility for her training and her actions. If she fails, the consequences fall on me. The council members exchanged glances. You would risk your throne for this girl? Morai asked slowly. I would risk more than that. Elowen's heart stuttered. She looked up at Caix, but his face was unreadable, his storm-colored eyes fixed on the council. Very well, Morai said finally. 1 month at the next full moon, she will be tested. If she fails, if she cannot demonstrate control, she will be executed, and you, Caix Vane, will abdicate the throne. The words landed like hammer blows. Theon whistled low under his breath. Well, stakes have been raised. Caix didn't flinch. Agreed. Then this audience has concluded. Morai waved a gnarled hand. Train her well, Alpha King. Your crown depends on it. The council members filed out through a side passage, their robes whispering against the stone. When the last one disappeared, Elowen whirled on Caix. Are you insane? You just bet your entire kingdom on me. I did. You don't even know me. I know enough. Caix turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw something vulnerable beneath his controlled exterior. I know you survived 21 years of abuse without breaking. I know you walked into a ballroom full of predators wearing a stolen mask and held your own. I know your wolf is one of the most powerful beings I have ever witnessed, and she chose to spare the people who had tormented her. He stepped closer. That tells me everything I need to know about who you are. Elowen's throat tightened. What if I can't do it? What if I lose control and fail? Then we fail together. Caix's hand came up to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. But I don't intend to fail. Do you? The challenge in his voice sparked something in her chest. That same fire that had burned when she decided to sneak into the summit. The defiance that had kept her alive through years of cruelty. No, she said firmly, I don't. Good. He released her, stepping back. Training starts at dawn. Get some rest. He turned to leave, Theon falling into step beside him. Brother, Theon said cheerfully, loud enough for Elwyn to hear. You are absolutely smitten. It's adorable, also terrifying. Shut up, Theon. Their voices faded down the corridor, leaving Elwyn alone in the vast chamber. She looked up at the painted constellations, searching for the moon among the stars. 1 month to master her power, 1 month to save herself and the king who had risked everything for her. I told you, the voice inside her whispered. Everything changed that night. Elos smiled grimly. It's not done changing yet. Training was brutal. Every morning before sunrise, Kayaks pushed her through physical conditioning that left her muscles screaming. Every afternoon, she practiced shifting, learning to call her wolf forward without the catalyst of trauma. Every evening, she studied the history of the Lunaris bloodline, memorizing the techniques her ancestors had used to channel the moon's power. And every night she collapsed into bed, exhausted beyond words, only to dream of mercurial eyes and whispered promises. 2 weeks into her training, she could shift on command. 3 weeks in, she could hold the form for hours without losing herself to the wolf's instincts. The council's deadline loomed like a guillotine, but Elwyn was making progress. Then the message arrived. She was in the training courtyard practicing a technique that allowed her to focus her aura into a directed pulse when Kykes strode in with a face like thunder. What's wrong? Elo asked, dropping her stance. Kykes handed her a scroll, the wax seal already broken. The seal depicted a flame consuming a crescent moon. The Ember Covenant, she breathed. They've made their move. Kex's voice was tight with controlled rage. They've allied with Aldrich. The Duskfall Pack and 3 others have declared you an abomination. They're demanding the council accelerate your trial to tomorrow night. Elwyn's blood ran cold. Can they do that? Until Aldrich is formally convicted, the old laws still recognize him as a sitting alpha. The Ember Covenant is exploiting that loophole. They're invoking an ancient provision, trial by challenge. Kayaks took the scroll back, crumpling it in his fist. If an accused wolf's right to exist is contested, a challenger can demand immediate combat to the death. Who's the challenger? Cakes met her eyes and she saw murder in his gaze. Aldrich. Of course, the man who had beaten her, starved her, tried to break her. Now he wanted to kill her legally. He can't defeat me, Elwyn said more confidently than she felt. My wolf is stronger than his. Your wolf is stronger than anyone's, Kayaks agreed. But Aldrich isn't fighting fair. The Covenant has supplied him with weapons. Blades forged from Moonbane, the only substance that can weaken a Lunaris wolf. Elwyn's confidence wavered. There's a substance that can weaken me? It was created specifically to kill your bloodline during the massacre. We thought the knowledge was lost. Kykes' jaw clenched. It seems the Covenant preserved more than just their hatred. Then I'll fight without shifting, human form only. He'll still have the blades. Then I'll take them from him. Kex stared at her for a long moment. Then unexpectedly, he laughed. It was a rough, surprised sound, as if he'd forgotten he was capable of it. You are the most stubborn wolf I've ever met. I've had practice. His expression softened. He crossed to her, taking her hands in his. If you lose tomorrow, I lose you. The raw honesty in his voice stole her breath. "And the throne," she whispered. "Damn the throne." His grip tightened. "I'm not talking about politics. I'm talking about you. These past 3 weeks training with you, watching you fight, watching you grow. You've become important to me." Elowyn's heart was pounding so hard. She was sure he could hear it. "Kykes, I know the timing is terrible. I know you have every reason to distrust powerful men who claim to care about you, but I need you to know that whatever happens tomorrow, whatever the outcome, you are not alone anymore." She looked up into his eyes, seeing the vulnerability he usually kept so carefully hidden. "I know," she said softly. "I've known since you draped your coat over me in that ballroom." Something shifted between them. The air grew heavy with tension that had nothing to do with danger. Cakes leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. The kiss was soft at first, almost tentative. Then her hands fisted in his sweater and his arms wrapped around her, and softness gave way to hunger. He kissed her like she was oxygen, and he was drowning. She kissed him back like she had been waiting her entire life, without knowing what she was waiting for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kayaks pressed his forehead to hers. "Win tomorrow," he said roughly. "That's an order." Elowyn smiled, fierce and wild. "Watch me." The trial arena was a natural amphitheater nestled in a valley below the citadel. Stone seating carved into the surrounding cliffs held thousands of wolves from across the territories, all gathered to witness history. Elowyn stood at the northern entrance wearing fitted black combat gear that Theon had commissioned specifically for her. Her pale hair was braided tight against her skull. Her violet eyes burned with golden flecks, her wolf rising close to the surface. Across the arena, Aldrich waited. He had bulked up in the weeks since the summit, likely through artificial enhancement. His smile was cruel, confident. Strapped to his thighs were 2 curved blades that gleamed with an oily, iridescent sheen. Moonbane, citizens of the 12 territories. Marai's amplified voice boomed across the arena. "We gather to witness trial by challenge. The accused Elowyn of the Lunaris bloodline stands charged with existential threat to our kind. The challenger, Alpha Aldrich Ashworth of Duskfall, invokes his right to trial by combat." Boos erupted from sections of the crowd. Elowyn noted with grim satisfaction that not everyone supported Aldrich's claim. "The rules are absolute," Morai continued. "No outside interference. Combat ends in yield, incapacitation, or death. The victor's claim becomes law." Kayak stood in the royal box, flanked by Theon and the Onyx Guard. His face was carved from stone, but his pale metallic eyes never left her. She gave him the barest nod. "Begin." Aldrich didn't waste time. He drew both blades and charged, moving faster than a wolf his size should be capable of. The Covenant had enhanced more than just his muscles. Elowyn didn't shift, not yet. She dodged his first slash, feeling the blade whistle past her cheek. The moonbane hummed with a frequency that made her wolf recoil instinctively. "Come on, Ghost," Aldrich taunted, slashing again. "Show them the monster. Let them see what you really are." "You first," Elowyn replied, ducking under his arm and driving her elbow into his kidney. Aldrich grunted, spinning with a backhand that caught her across the face. She stumbled, tasting blood. The crowd gasped. Pathetic. Aldrich sneered. All that power, and you're still just the runt I used to kick around. He lunged again, both blades aimed at her heart. Elowyn dropped. She hit the ground and rolled, coming up behind him. Before he could turn, she leaped onto his back, wrapping her arm around his throat. I was never pathetic, she hissed into his ear. I was surviving. She squeezed. Aldrich choked, thrashing wildly, but she held on. He slammed backward, crushing her against the arena wall. Pain exploded through her spine. Her grip loosened. Aldrich ripped free, whirling to face her. Blood trickled from his lip where he'd bitten himself. His eyes were wild with fury. Enough games, he shifted. The transformation was violent, fueled by whatever dark enhancements the Covenant had provided. His wolf form was massive, black-furred, with veins of sickly purple pulsing beneath the skin. The moonbane blades had been designed to attach to his forelegs, turning his paws into weapons. He lunged for her throat. Now, her wolf demanded. Elowyn shifted. The transformation was faster than before, smoother. One heartbeat, she was human. The next, the white wolf stood in her place, radiant and terrible. She met Aldrich's charge head-on. They collided with a thunderclap of force that cracked the arena floor. Elowyn's jaws snapped for his throat, but he twisted, raking the moonbane blades across her flank. Pain, unlike anything she'd experienced, tore through her. The moonbane burned like acid, sapping the strength from her muscles. She staggered. Aldrich pressed his advantage, slashing again and again. Each cut weakened her further. Blood matted her white fur, turning it crimson. This is what you are. Aldrich's voice echoed in her mind. The psychic channel opened between shifted wolves. A mistake, an abomination. You should have died with the rest of your cursed bloodline. Elowyn fell. Her legs gave out, and she collapsed onto the blood-soaked stone. The crowd had gone silent. In the royal box, Cakes had risen from his seat, his control visibly fracturing. Aldrich loomed over her, raising one blade-equipped paw for the killing blow. Any last words, Ghost? Elo looked up at him. Through the pain, through the weakness, something ancient stirred in her core. The moon was rising behind the cliffs, its silver light spilling into the arena like liquid. She remembered what Kayaks had told her during training. The Lunaris don't just channel the moon's power, they are the moon's children, and the moon protects its own. She stopped fighting the pain. She embraced it. Light exploded from her body. The moonlight didn't just illuminate the arena, it flooded it, cascading down like a waterfall of liquid silver, and every drop was drawn to Elowyn. Her wounds began to close. The moonbane burn sizzled and faded. Moonbane could poison Lunaris blood, but it could not withstand the direct blessing of the full moon. Strength surged back into her limbs, stronger than before, amplified by the goddess's blessing. She rose. Aldrich stumbled backward, his enhanced confidence shattering. What is this? What are you doing? Elo didn't answer with words. She answered with power. A shockwave of pure lunar energy erupted from her form, blasting outward in all directions. Aldrich was thrown across the arena, slamming into the far wall with a sickening crunch. His moonbane blades shattered on impact, the corrupted metal dissolving into ash, but she wasn't done. Elowyn stalked toward him, her white fur now blazing with inner light, her golden eyes twin suns. Each step cracked the stone beneath her paws. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Aldrich shifted back to human form, broken and bleeding on the ground. He tried to crawl away, but there was nowhere to go. "Please," he gasped. "Mercy, I yield! I yield!" Elowyn stopped above him. Her wolf demanded blood, demanded justice for every beating, every starvation, and every night spent shivering in a cellar. It would be so easy. One bite, one snap of her jaws, and the man who had made her life a living hell would be gone forever. She opened her mouth. Then she saw Caix in the royal box. His eyes were fixed on her, not with fear or judgment, but with understanding, with trust. He believed she was more than a monster. She chose to prove him right. Elowyn shifted back to human form, standing naked and glowing above her broken abuser. She looked down at him with cold contempt. "I don't yield," she said, her voice carrying across the silent arena. "And I don't kill pathetic men who can't hurt me anymore." She turned her back on him, the ultimate insult. "But you will confess. You will tell this council everything the Ember Covenant planned, every wolf involved, every weapon they forged, every bloodline they corrupted." She looked over her shoulder, and her violet eyes flashed gold. "Or I will find them myself, and I won't be merciful twice." Aldrich broke. He sobbed out names, locations, plans. The conspiracy spilled from him like poison from a wound. Council members scrambled to record every word. Elowyn walked away from him, toward the royal box, toward Caix. The crowd erupted. They weren't booing. They weren't afraid. They were cheering. Thousands of wolves on their feet chanting her name. "Elowyn, Elowyn, Elowyn." Caix met her at the edge of the arena floor. He shrugged off his coat and wrapped it around her just as he had done that first night. "You terrified me," he murmured against her hair. "Good," she whispered back. "Now you know how I felt when you bet your throne on me." He laughed, pulling her closer. Above them, the moon shone brighter than it had in 3 centuries. 3 months later, the obsidian citadel was transformed. Banners of white and silver hung alongside the traditional black, representing the union of 2 bloodlines. Wolves from all 12 territories filled the great hall, dressed in their finest, gathered for an event that hadn't occurred in 300 years, the coronation of a Lunaris queen. Elowyn stood before the obsidian throne, wearing a gown of moonlight silk that seemed to glow from within. Her pale hair was woven with silver threads. On her brow sat a crown of white gold, shaped like crescent moons interlocking with flames. Below the dais, under royal guard, stood Seralda Ashworth in prison gray. The former Alpha's daughter had been tried alongside Aldrich during the months of preparation. Found guilty of conspiracy, attempted murder, and crimes against a royal bloodline. Her punishment was fitting, but not cruel for cruelty's sake. She would spend the rest of her natural life under royal supervision, rebuilding orphan houses, healing halls, and safe shelters for the Omegas she had once despised. "How does it feel?" Seralda had spat that morning when she was first brought before Elowyn. "Playing queen after crawling from the gutter?" Elowyn had simply smiled. "It feels like justice." Now Caix stood beside her, magnificent in black and silver formal wear. He took her hand, interlacing their fingers as they faced the crowd. I present to you, Keix's voice rang through the hall, Queen Elwyn Vane, the moon's flame, my mate, my equal, my heart. The crowd erupted into thunderous applause. Elwyn looked out at the sea of faces. She saw Theon in the front row, grinning like he had personally orchestrated this outcome. She saw Marin, the cook's daughter who had shown her kindness, now elevated to a position in the royal household. She saw council members who had once demanded her execution, now bowing their heads in respect. Aldrich had already been tried by the council under heavy guard, stripped of his title, his pack, and his power. The Ember Covenant had been dismantled, its leaders executed, and his sentence was exile, wandering the Roguelands until he died. Elwyn had not gloated when the sentence was read. She had simply watched the guards take him away, the ghost he had tried to destroy, now wearing a crown. Elwyn turned back to Cax, and he was looking at her with such raw adoration that her heart ached. "Any regrets?" he asked softly. She thought about it. The dungeons, the abuse, the years of being invisible. "None, uskomut." "Donet anan," she said. "Every moment led me here to this, to you." Cax kissed her and the crowd cheered louder. When they broke apart, Elwyn faced her people, her pack, and her kingdom. The runt was gone. The ghost had vanished. The Omega had transformed. The queen remained.